Alright everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Modernist Guide. It's Metal Mayhem Part 3. This round we've got more eclectic and semi-extreme metal, some of the more hardcore and deeper dives that maybe metal magazines or like people really rooted in the metal community have been talking about, and so they're not really heard on the radio all that much. We got some veterans, we got some legends. Just gonna get right into it. Another big 9. I'm going to start with Carcass, who basically helped create the melodic death metal trend. And Torn Arteries is like their 5th, maybe 6th record. They haven't done a lot. They've been around for almost 30 years, but they've taken big gaps and breaks. And this one is kind of weird. I don't like how it sounds. It sounds really muddy and fuzzy, and everything's lumped together. It's hard to distinguish. It's hard to really care that the riffs and vocals are separate entities. They feel kind of one and the same in a bad way. Heartwork is like this huge masterpiece that everyone loves. It's a legendary album, and they're kind of shadows of their former selves here, I think. Even their comeback record from like 2013 or 14 was a big surprise of how good it still was after it had been so long. But here, there's some bad lyricism, like Wake Up and Smell the Carcass. I just can't gel with it. After like 4 listens, the only 2 songs I can really remember liking that had some pretty decent grooves were Dance of Ixtab and Flesh Ripping Sonic Torment Limited. And like these names are I don't know. They feel like they're chasing something that they can't really do anymore. I'm not sure. I'm not big on it. So I'm just gonna call it a flat 5 out of 10 because it might still be too high. I don't know. It's not terrible, it's just not interesting. Next we have Be'lakor, which is another huge veteran of melodic death metal. They're a bit more proggy, they have longer songs, they're a lot more intense. But something about the vocals here off their 5th album, Coherence, just doesn't work for me either. Not as bad. I preferred big, booming, but still well enunciated death growls and screams, and this one just sounds way too garbled. And I went back to their older stuff just to make sure, and they kinda are, but there's something about maybe the production. So with that being said, this just doesn't feel as memorable. There's something murky and bogged down. It doesn't feel as good and as interesting as their like first 3 records, which I think put them in a class above most melodic death metal bands. One of the leaders of the pack, Insomnium's kind of been experimenting a little bit more, and here Be'lakor sounds like a kind of watered down version of their earlier stuff where they were really, really good. It just feels kind of dull, and I think part of it feels like they just haven't changed enough, even a little bit, to seem interesting anymore. It's their 5th record, and they kind of sound like they did in their 1st and 2nd, but not as compelling. So I'm going to give this a 6.25. But check out Locust, Valence, and Hidden Window. Next, we do have some good shit, and these guys, if any metal puts you to sleep or bores you, these guys fucking won't, I don't think. Archspire, Bleed the Future. This is only, I think, their 3rd record. They wowed me with their 2017 record, and that one was just really amazing. And it's still pretty good here. Not as, like, blown away. I don't think they do as many tricks with their style, but what they do is they just speed everything up. They really feel like just visceral and blistering and non-stop. It's an amazing adrenaline shot. The vocals are super fast. I've seen someone try to say it's rapping. It's not rapping. You can sing or even scream really fast and it not be fucking rap. Like, that's an insult to rap, because rap is its own thing and it's its own art form. And just because something sounds like, spoken word or fast words rhyming put together doesn't mean that it's rap, and you shouldn't just like call it that way. Just the same way I guess a lot of people get upset when you hear growling and screaming, someone just calls it screamo when screamo is something specific. Here, sonically, they're considered technical death metal, which if you just take like old 80s Metallica, speed it up a little bit more and sharper with death growls and screams, that's what tech death is considered. It's more intricate and precise. But this sped up anymore. The vocals kind of make it sound like Metalocalypse sped up by like 5, and it's really amazing. I love it. This is kind of like the death metal equivalent of go brrr. It's the best kind of audio cardiac arrest you're going to have all year, I think. However, it doesn't necessarily reach the heights of its previous record. I'm just going to give it a 7.75 here. Still really good, but I think they can do better, and they still impress me. So it might actually be a little higher deserving, but just it feels right to say 7.75 because I think they can do better, even though that fucking album cover is a 9 out of 10. Check out Drone Corpse, Aviator, Golden Mouth of Ruin, Bleed the Future, Drain of Incarnation, and Reverie on the Onyx. Next we have VOLA. They're more of a prog gent band, but they're really like spacious and soothing. This is their fourth record, I believe, Witness. These guys are all about futuristic, booming, and dense riffs and melodies and just soothing, soaring atmosphere and vocals. There's a little electronica and glitchiness to it, and it feels kind of like just floating or flying through cyberspace. It's just one of the best atmospheric, but still very fast paced prog metal records I've heard this year. One song in particular, These Black Claws, they try something a little different. They have a rapper on here named Shaman, and it's kind of funky and it's a little like spooky and deranged, and I really enjoy the temp and experimentation. And it works for me, probably doesn't work for a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people with this style who love this style. I don't think a lot of people who love this style really like that song. I've seen some discourse about it. It doesn't matter, but I like it, so I would say check that out. I give it a super solid 8, and along with These Black Claws, I would check out 24 Light Years, Straight Lines, Napalm, and Inside Your Fur. Up next, we have a really big, strange one. This is Spiritbox. They are kind of the talk of the town. People are blown away by a lot of what they've done, especially their singles that aren't on the album, since they've been kind of just putting stuff out since 2017. They actually are the second singer and guitarist from I Wrestled a Bear Once, which I would call them memecore from the late 2000s. Around 0809, there was a specific type of metalcore where they tried to incorporate as much wacky, grindy, glitchy electronic shit into their music, no matter how good or bad or strange it sounded, just to see, I guess, who could top each other in sounding the zaniest and the most blistering batshit. And a lot of it wasn't good, and a lot of it no one wants to talk about anymore. It was super embarrassing, and it was just this core group of, weirdos that wanted to do the wacky, waveable, inflatable tube man version of metalcore with electronic synth shit. And I Wrestled a Bear Once didn't really survive. They had a very controlled record. I think their last record, Hail Mary, I think really shows as a precursor to this endeavor. It really goes for the electronic, heavy, dense prog metal kind of stuff and metalcore, and the production constantly reminds me of like R&B and modern pop production. Like specifically, I keep going back to the Weeknd Starboy album. I'm not sure what it is, but it keeps creeping up, and the vocals are just so simple but really well delivered and powerful, and it's clearly produced in modern hazy pop aesthetic, but then there's the crunching, blistering guitar and drums, along with all the really kooky and creative electronica that's placed in throughout. They try a lot of things, and they get away with a lot of stuff that I think doesn't actually fully work and is overall appealing. And then I listen to it again, I'm like, no, that's pretty good. So I think they can only go up. I'm in a weird place where I don't know if I love anything on this record as much as like I'm impressed and I enjoy listening to it. It's a weird thing. I'm not blown away and I'm not sure why exactly. I think it's because I'm still finding new things and I'm constantly perplexed on how they get so much crammed in there, and it doesn't feel nearly as zany and all over the place and split as other stuff that I really like, but I know a lot of people aren't into because it takes its time to go from one place to another, and people think that kind of genre jumping isn't interesting. But here they have managed production wise to make it all sound super cohesive and formatted together in one album. So if anything, the production is just masterclass, and these perfect vocals, while not magnificent, just do their job so well. And the lead singer, she's just perfected her delivery. It's just worked. This is like 6 years of hard work really paying off on a debut record. I give it a 8.25 just because I'm still on the fence of some things, but it's definitely a record where I was wrong in thinking that it wasn't a big deal. Because I heard a single or two and I wasn't sure. And I'm glad I actually checked out the record. And that is a recommendation in itself. That one, I'm glad I did it instead of not. You should check it out. Check out Hurt You, Yellow Jacket, The Summit for sure, Secret Garden, We Live in a Strange World, and Circle With Me. On the flip side, another progressive kind of gent and metalcore band is Jinjer. I'm not super into Jinjer. I tried this record just to see if they could change my mind, and I don't know. They try a couple of things, nothing like super standoutish for me, while also having some pretty appealing vocal switches between some really good screams, some well focused growls, and some really good clean singing. It makes me think of just some really good in between of prog and metalcore and groove metal, which is a little dirtier and grittier and grimier to an extent, not super deep, but just enough where you can feel that grit. And that grit, along with vocals that kind of remind me of Flyleaf, make it an interesting dynamic. But there's just too many songs on this record. It's a little samey after a while. The record's called Wallflowers. I think I forgot to say that. I'd give it a 5.75. It's done very well, but most of it's not for me or it gets boring really fast. I would recommend Colossus, Disclosure, and Wallflower, and that's kind of it, sadly. Next, we have one of the biggest Japanese metal legends out there, the Gazette. These guys have been around for like 25 years. They were huge and integral in what was known as Visual Kei, which for the most part was a slightly operatic version of nu metal, but the Japanese style is so much more different than the American style of nu metal. There was not a lot of rapping. It mostly focused on like samples and just really groovy, deep riffs. So like if you like Rage Against the Machine guitar or a sleeker version of Korn that's not as like grimy or grunty and way better vocals than Jonathan Davis, then this is the kind of band you check out their whole discography, and they haven't really missed a step. They've gotten a little glitchier here on this one. This is called Mass. This is their 10th record, and I'm still impressed by what they can pull off. Every other record I think is really good. They are constantly trying new sampling styles, and this has a more traditional Japanese instrument feel with certain strings and drums that make it feel very traditional Japanese music, along with still just very good crunching heavy riffs. They got some pretty decent screams. They're not really on here too much. The clean vocals just soar really good without it being over the top or dramatic. I think it's some of the best like alternative metal you'll hear. It's way better than the American alternative metal scene. If you ever thought, man, I wish Breaking Benjamin wasn't fucking boring. It's these guys change everything. They're just I really hope people just check them out on just how enthusiastic and pushy I am being about it, cuz I think if you just like simple, really good jamming grooves and kind of endearing and somewhat like romantic vocals that just like sound like they're enjoying themselves and enjoying your company while they're, telling you about whatever. And it is all in Japanese, so I can't help that with you if you care about lyrics a lot. I like looking in the lyrics, but I don't need it for Japanese music. I really just dig the shit out of this record. I give it an 8.5. Check out Nox Hold Daku, which is in kanji on Spotify, so track 6. Pale Barbarian for the real heavy shit, and Frenzy if you want equally heavy shit, and the last song. Next we have Fear Factory. They've also been around for like 30, maybe 35 years. It's been a long time. They helped pioneer industrial metal, which basically is just like the whirring and clanking and crunching of actual like metallic sounds. Like it sounds like you're in a factory, and it could be really gritty and grimy, or it could be very sleek and robotic. And Fear Factory is all about making the best kind of robot metal you can think of. This is something like their 12th record, I think, and they've had so much discourse within the band of members leaving and coming back, and finally lead singer has bolted. He's done with everybody's shit, or everyone's done with his shit. There's so much infighting with this band, even though I enjoy them a lot. So this may be very well either the last record or just the last record with the lead singer who's been the only one there the whole time. The vocals are still really good though. I love when he's just yelping and screaming the way he does, and then into really good, just soaring, uplifting vocals. And it's just chaotic and apocalyptic in 1 minute, and then just hopeful and very well beautiful soaring the next. And that's just their bread and butter. It's kind of how they've always sound, but I enjoyed a lot. So I'm gonna give it a 6.5. It is, I guess, same old, but I'm glad that no matter how much bullshit they go through, they don't sound like they're completely falling apart on this record too much. But there is like a lot, and you can kind of live with like half the record, really. But definitely check out Recode and Aggression Continuum, Fuel Injected Suicide Machine, and Cognitive Dissonance. And finally, number 9 today, we have Leprous with Aphelion. This is something around their 7th or so record. And I love Leprous to death, but they have changed leaps and bounds almost every single record. Where I found them in 2011 is not where they are now, but they've kind of come back a little bit on that. They have gotten more and more stripped down. The main focus on the last few records have definitely been on some of the best vocals you'll hear in prog. He's just a good, amazing singer. Some of the best vocals. They are soaring and wildly sharp. They're not falsetto, but they're not baritone. They're just like this insane, vicious alto. He can hit some fucking notes. You should check out Leprous if you never have, just to hear how the dude sounds. It's very spacious for the most part, very eclectic, very intricate playing, and then accompanied by heavy riffs, and then again, vocals are always the premier. The best parts is when he's like super soothing, serenading, and then they all come crashing together. He just shoots up his vocals really high, the drums come in, the guitar blares, and it's kind of that thing that Nirvana did, Dirty and Grimy, where it's low, deep verses, slow, simple, and then it gets you in the chorus full on power and aggression, but it's done in such a more sleek and atmospheric, metallic way. And I just love that 1-2 punch combo. And this is the best they've done it in a couple records to me personally. I think they just like to constantly experiment on how to make the whole band focus on making that vocal delivery just so outstanding, because it's always not just how good the singer is, it's how the instruments accompany him, and I think they do it better than most prog bands out there right now. However, some of the record puts me to just odds, because it's like, man, there could have been a little more effort here or there, but they love being calming and atmospheric while giving you those bursts in like junky settings where it's like, no, 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 I need the next one. So this is a 7.5. Definitely check out Running Low. That's the song I heard where I was like, oh shit, they're back. And not entirely, but pretty close. So I'm really hopeful for the next record. Also, Silhouette, and The Silent Revelation, The Shadow Side, and Nighttime Disguise. And that's pretty much for this one. Hope you found something that you didn't know existed, and it turns out to just make your day. As always, like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much. See you next time, and thank you for listening. Have a good night.